For example, philosophers Glyn Humphreys and Jane Riddoch open a highly technical article on action and perception by posing a provocative opening question immediately followed by an illustrative case in point. What is an object? Consider watching someone walk behind a set of railings, a circumstance in which all the parts of their body are not visible at a given time. The lay answer, that the object is the person behind the railing, fails to account for how we see the fragmented parts of the person as a single thing. How does our visual system construct the whole object when the sensory evidence for the object is fragmentary? Without the image of a person walking behind a railing firmly planted in our minds, the author's subsequent discussion of bottom-up grouping, familiarity-based grouping, and other key principles of Gestalt psychology would be considerably harder to follow, and their central argument, that our perception of discrete objects depends on the actions we are programming and on the presence of action relations between stimuli, would be much more difficult to grasp. Anecdotes are examples drawn from real life, as when psycholinguist Steven Pinker illustrates the ideological power of grammar with two historical vignettes. In 1984, George Orwell has the state banning irregular verbs as a sign of its determination to crush the human spirit. In 1989, the writer of a personal ad in the New York Review of Books asked, "Are you an irregular verb?" as a sign of her determination to exalt it. An anecdote is, in essence, a miniature story, sometimes sketched in a sentence or two, sometimes spun out over several paragraphs. Not only do anecdotes effectively illustrate abstract concepts, they also satisfy our natural desire for narratives that feature human beings rather than merely ideas. A carefully placed anecdote can revive a reader's flagging attention and even inject some welcome humor into an otherwise sober academic discussion. Case studies, likewise, draw us into stories about real people. They show and tell how theoretical concepts get played out in the world at large. In professionally oriented disciplines such as business, medicine, and education, entire academic journals, the Journal of Business Case Studies, the Journal of Medical Case Reports, the Journal of Education Case Studies, are devoted to the practice and discussion of case-based research methodologies. Academics and other more theoretically oriented disciplines use case studies in less rigorous but equally fruitful ways, anchoring and exemplifying larger arguments through attention to real-life situations. Philosopher and feminist geographer Gillian Rose uses home-based interviews with 14 middle-class English mothers to explore the role of family photographs in defining domestic space. Pacific Studies scholars David Geggio and Karen Ann Watson-Geggio examine a specific rural development project in the Solomon Islands to reveal how modernization, globalization, and older Anglo-European notions of community development continue to fail rural development in the Solomons. Organizational management experts Jeffrey Pfeffer and Tanya Menon analyze a disproportionately high knowledge valuation assigned to external business consultants by tracing the consultancy experiences of two different companies. Through detailed analysis of specific situations, these authors make large, transferable claims about cultural identity formation, post-colonial rural development, and organizational knowledge, respectively. A scenario functions very much like a case study, except that it depicts a fictional situation rather than a real one. Sometimes scenarios skate along the edge of a satire, as when, in an article titled Embodiment, Academics, and the Audit Culture, sports scientist Andrew Sparks tells the funny but not so funny story of a mythical, perhaps, academic at an imaginary, perhaps, university in England that is permeated by an audit culture. In the article's introduction, Sparks explains that he based the embodied struggles of his tortured professor on informal interviews with academics at various universities in England and selected personal experiences. more realistic scenarios.